Discover the hidden truth. Until you embrace your worth, amazing respect follows in 30 days. Charlotte stared at the propaganda poster on the wall of her drab office, its garish colors clashing with the beige walls surrounding her. It felt like another cage, holding her in a mundane existence. Every day, buried beneath a pile of paperwork at the local law firm, she felt her dreams die a slow death. As an administrative assistant, she was the invisible force behind the facade of power that the lawyers clung to, her voice silenced by the lingering belief that she didn't matter. How could a woman like her, 38, single, and raising an introverted teenage daughter in a town that barely noticed her, ever expect to find respect? She watched her daughter, Lily, retreating deeper into her room, headphones blaring while the world outside drowned under the steady rain. That solitude, which once enchanted Charlotte, now felt like an echo of her insecurities. It reminded her of her own quiet childhood filled with dreams unfulfilled, aspirations drowned in the relentless tide of bills and routine. One rainy afternoon, the relentless beating of raindrops urged her to the attic, where she stumbled across forgotten boxes filled with memories. Dust settled around her, thick like the weight on her chest. She pulled out an old journal, one once belonging to her father, a revered civil rights lawyer. As she flipped the pages, his passionate words surged inside her, igniting a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "We fight for those who don't have a voice," he had written. Those words stung, reminding her starkly of her own silence. But could she really carve her own path? The quiet battle within her began to simmer as dreams of writing, of fighting the injustices she witnessed daily, stirred awake. Yet insecurity lurked, laughter bubbling to the surface when she slipped her essays to colleagues who scoffed, "You're not a writer, Charlotte. You're an assistant." Each derisive remark was a punch to her gut, reinforcing that familiar cage around her heart. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she poured her soul into essays penned late at night, the backlash at work only intensified. She found herself spiraling, the walls pressing in, each day in that office a reminder of her meekness. Just when she felt the essays gaining traction, an unsettling discovery shattered her world, a scandal lurking in the firm's shadows, intertwining dishonesty with the people she once called colleagues. The weight of her silence became unbearable. Now, with a determined heart and her father's legacy whispering in her ear, she stood at a precipice. Should she protect the meager paycheck that kept the lights on and the bills paid, or should she rise against corruption to become the voice she believed hidden within her? Charlotte's fingers trembled above the keyboard, the ticking clock mirroring her racing mind. She felt the pressure mounting, the past haunting her thoughts. Hadn't she failed before? Wasn't it safer to remain negligible? Her breath hitched, as if suspended in time. The world outside faded into a muted hum. The weight of her choices crushed down, leaving her teetering on the edge of revelation and obscurity. With a parched throat and crumpled papers surrounding her, Charlotte's heart raced. A knock on the door shattered the stillness. In that moment, everything she had fought for hung in the balance, confronting her with the unknown as she stood at the crossroads of her life, her voice on the brink of discovery and transformation. Charlotte opened the door, heart thrumming like a drum in her chest. It was Marie, the senior partner, her demeanor sharp and unreadable. "Charlotte, we need you in the conference room now," she said, her voice slicing through the tension in the air. The conference room was where decisions were made, the battlefield for negotiations and deals. As Charlotte followed, her mind raced with possibilities. Had they discovered her essays? Were they about to confront her about the rumors she had overheard of manipulations and unethical behavior within the firm? Each scenario unfurled like a string of undoing fabric, tangling with her fears. Inside the room, colleagues gathered around a long mahogany table, faces tight and serious. The atmosphere was thick with secrets, and Charlotte felt her throat constrict, her voice trapped within. As the conversation unfolded, talk of the firm's upcoming audit sparked whispers of discontent and fear. The partner's voice carried an undercurrent of worry that resonated too closely with her own. Their refusal to confront the corruption she had stumbled upon gnawed at her conscience. Could she really stay silent and continue working within this facade? Charlotte, you've been with us a long time. We need your insight. What do you think about what has been happening? Maria's question pierced through the noise like a spotlight searching for the unseen. Charlotte felt the eyes of her colleagues on her, piercing through the haze of her uncertainty. This was a moment to either cower or step forward. She shifted in her seat. She could either uphold the silence or finally let her voice break free from the chains that bound it. The discrepancies we've seen in practice, they are damaging our reputation, she began, her voice shaky but growing steadier. If the audit reveals what I suspect, we're all implicated. I think it's time we confront the issues head-on instead of hiding behind our roles. Gasps erupted from several stunned faces. The weight of her words hung in the air, lingering like the scent of rain-soaked earth. Marie nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. You have a point, but addressing these allegations could jeopardize all of us, Charlotte. Are you willing to stand up against people who will retaliate? Charlotte steadied her breath, weighing the gravity of her stance. They already have. We need to choose integrity over convenience. We owe that to each other, to this firm, and perhaps most importantly, to ourselves. Silence filled the room, and it was uncomfortable. Fear coiled around her, fear of losing her job, her security, her very identity. Yet in that uncertainty, a flicker of determination ignited. It forced her to question all the years spent in unworthy silence. At that moment, she realized she could either be a passive observer, or she could claim the narrative of her life. As Marie finally spoke, her tone was softer yet authoritative. Let us deliberate our next steps. This could be risky, Charlotte. Are you sure you're prepared for the consequences? Her heart raced again, but this time, it wasn't with doubt. Charlotte had begun to peel back the layers, realizing the invincible truth. Embracing her worth meant not only recognizing it within herself but standing against the very forces that sought to oppress it. I am, she declared, finding strength in her own resolve, both terrifying and exhilarating. Time seemed to freeze as Marie scrutinized her, the room collectively holding its breath. With that moment of clarity, Charlotte felt the first cracks of the cage begin to widen. The silence of her past was shifting, making way for an entirely new chapter. But just as hope filled her heart, a message chimed on her phone, an anonymous tip about the firm's darkest dealings, threatening her newfound momentum. Who would dare reach out to her now, and what would it mean for her path ahead? The next step was all too uncertain, but her instinct flared with the intensity of a storm. Charlotte was no longer just an assistant, she was a force waiting to be reckoned with, even amid rising turbulence. Charlotte stood in the conference room, her phone still vibrating ominously in her hand. The pulse of newfound determination coursed through her veins, but the chill of uncertainty gripped her heart. She glanced around at the faces of her colleagues, still awash in shock after her revelation. Each person wore an expression that mirrored her own, a mixture of fear and hope. Marie collected herself first, breaking the lingering silence with a swift gesture signaling the meeting's need to transition. Let's not move too hasty, she began, her tone carrying the weight of authority intertwined with wavering concern. We need to think strategically. Charlotte, you've raised valid points, but you're asking us to tread dangerous waters. Charlotte's thoughts raced, ideas battling for precedence. Should she rely on the tip she just received? Who might have sent it? Or was it a distraction meant to throw her off her newfound path? As the room began to express their worries and doubts, Charlotte listened more intently than ever. The voices of her colleagues intertwined, defeated, resigned to potential repercussions. Drawing on the strength building within her, she interjected, what if we initiated our own inquiry? We owe it to ourselves to at least investigate the credibility of the tip-off. If there is truth to it, then we not only clear our names but also expose potential wrongdoing. The room tilted toward her, expressions shifting from apprehension to cautious intrigue. Marie hardened her gaze, weighing the implications of Charlotte's proposal. Finally, she spoke, taking action means risking exposure. But if there are grounds for the claims, it may warrant our attention. The decision made, Charlotte stepped into a new role. Even if just for the moment, she felt like a leader. A shift in dynamics unveiled layers of latent confidence. The fraying strands of her anxiety began to weave stronger threads of resolve. She was no longer an assistant lingering in the shadows, the tides had turned. "Let us designate a small group," Charlotte suggested, words spilling forth like a riptide. "We can examine the accounts independently. We collectively decide who can be trusted. If this tip leads us somewhere viable, any fallout will be mitigated by our unified front." Encouraged murmurs rippled through the group. Even Marie seemed to light up slightly, the former wall of caution now appearing to crack just enough for an idea to take root. "All right," Marie agreed lucidly, her voice gathering an air of fierce determination. "We will assign tasks by end of day. Everyone will contribute what they can without overexposing ourselves. Charlotte, you'll head this effort." The words felt electric, igniting an inner spark. Charlotte nodded, masking her astonishment. A sudden flush of responsibility wrapped around her, like armor newly forged. She was moving into the unknown with a task she had inadvertently claimed. Yet it wasn't just the action that empowered her, it was the alignment of her values with her duties. The meeting concluded, colleagues departed, piecing together their roles in what was now an informal alliance. But Charlotte lingered a moment longer, the room emptied but reverberating with potential. She retrieved her phone, drawn as if by a magnet to the anonymous message. Was it a mere coincidence that she had received it just as she mulled over integrity? Anxiety blended with anticipation as she opened the message. "Charlotte, there is more at stake here than you know. They will try to silence you if you dig deeper. Proceed with caution." Her breath hitched, the weight of those words heavy upon her. The stakes had never been clearer, nor the stakes more dangerous. It felt as if her journey had only just begun, each layer revealing deeper shadows. Steeling herself, Charlotte clenched her jaw in determination, she wouldn't back down. The fight ahead promised growth and self-discovery, an opportunity to embrace the depths of her capabilities. What she didn't know was that those lurking shadows were closing in, and they were not alone. In the dark corners of the firm, someone had taken notice of her whispered intention. The time was quickly approaching when she would have to confront not just the demons of her workplace but also ideology she wondered if she could truly uphold. Charlotte's heart raced as she left the conference room. The weight of leadership, albeit a nascent form, pressed upon her shoulders. Each step felt charged with purpose, each moment a small victory over her prior hesitations. She had leapt from the invisible fringes of her former role into the core of a challenge that could reshape not just her career but her very identity. In the quiet of her office, with the door carefully closed, Charlotte leaned against the desk and took a slow, steadying breath. The vision of unity she had sparked moments ago now played vividly in her mind like a film reel. She dared to replay the way her colleagues had shifted in response to her words, how hope flickered back into their collective gaze. Hadn't she always wanted this? To be seen, to be heard? Here was her chance. She glanced at the anonymous message still glowing on her screen. Instead of fear, a surge of defiance bubbled up within her. The warning rang ominously, but it also ignited a flicker of awareness, a whisper reminding her that some truths must be fought for. She couldn't ignore the risk, but neither could she deny the potential for justice and accountability. With newfound clarity, Charlotte turned to her laptop and opened a document titled Investigation Plan. The cursor blinked expectantly, a reflection of her determination. She began outlining steps, identifying needs and resources. What information, what skills might her team bring forth to support this endeavor? The strategy unfolded before her like a series of interconnected links, she could see them all joining toward a greater goal. With every keystroke, her confidence solidified. Something within her shifted, she began to embrace the weight of responsibility, not as a burden, but as a standard of her worth. Articulating her thoughts transformed into a powerful tool. She knew she needed her team's insights and talents to truly press on. A quick call to Sam, the data analyst who often worked in the shadows, yielded immediate results. His keen eye for detail complemented her awareness of the ethical stakes involved. They agreed to meet in the conference room to brainstorm further. As they gathered, Charlotte's pulse quickened not with anxiety but with anticipation. This was her moment to facilitate a conversation, to harness dynamics she had previously watched from the sidelines. Sam entered with an eager smile, followed by Aisha, an attorney with a razor-sharp mind for corporate law, and Marcus, a former investigator skilled in sifting through tangled webs of information. In those next few hours, strategies blossomed. As ideas clashed and melded, Charlotte felt the fabric of her leadership style weaving itself into something stronger. She navigated the discussions, summoning confidence that felt new yet strangely familiar. Her voice boomed with clarity, and the energy in the room crackled with potential. They were not just chasing rumors, they were becoming an investigative force. However, in the back of her mind lurked the cryptic message, and Charlotte felt the shadows lurking closer. How long before they would perceive her as a threat? The stakes were not just professional but deeply personal now. Each breakthrough carried the scent of danger. As ideas crystallized into actions, a moment of vulnerability washed over her. Were they merely playing a game? Or was she leading them down a path she couldn't control? The question haunted her as the team began to divide tasks, offering her strength in numbers and depth she could rely on. Every decision deepened her understanding of herself, her values, her resolve. "Let us reconvene tomorrow to track our progress," she asserted, a hint of authority punctuating her words. Pride welled within her as she witnessed her colleagues nodding in agreement, eyes shining with belief. But just as the meeting adjourned and everyone filed out, a new text notification lit up her screen. It was another anonymous message, sharper than the last: "You've crossed a line. Stand down before it's too late." Charlotte's gut twisted, the shadows now unmistakably tangible. There was no turning back. Clenching her fists, she prepared for the storm ahead, ready to confront what would define her not only as a leader but also as a person. The time had come to face not just the challenges laid before her but also the truth of her own resilience, and she wasn't sure if it was enough. The next morning, as rays of sunlight filtered through her office blinds, Charlotte couldn't shake the weight of the anonymous message. It loomed ominously, wrapping around her thoughts like creeping ivy. She needed clarity, and she needed it fast. There was a palpable tension in the air, a charge she could almost touch. With every tick of the clock, her resolve hardened. She scrolled through her notes from the previous day's meeting, reflecting on the collective energy they'd harnessed. Each person brought a unique skill set into the mix, and Charlotte had to leverage the dynamic to navigate the challenges ahead. Sam's analytical precision, Aisha's legal expertise, and Marcus's investigative acumen would be essential in untangling the complexities of their inquiry. Yet, doubts began to swirl. What if her own inexperience as a leader undermined their momentum? A voice whispered in her mind, reminding her of the anonymous threat. Was she truly ready to take on such an immense responsibility? Yes, she thought, galvanizing her spirit. Embracing this role is just as vital as completing the investigation. Tapping her pen against the desk, she assessed her next move. In a shift from fear to determination, Charlotte knew she had to confront the shadows within her organization, the very culture that fostered silence rather than accountability. Her team needed to understand not only the tasks but the broader implications of their work. They were diving into murky waters, and she had to ensure they were all equipped to swim rather than sink. Charlotte sent a group message suggesting a pre-meeting to discuss the company's culture and any prior attempts to address their growing concerns. Such discussions could unveil the ghosts that haunted their organization, opening avenues for honesty and courage. As she hit send, a sense of gravity settled within her. This wasn't just about facts or emails, they were touching upon taboo realities. When the team gathered, Charlotte felt the electric hum of purpose in the room. She initiated the conversation, guiding each member to share their experiences of the company culture. Slowly, people began to speak up about the fears that stifled their voices, how the fear of repercussions quieted dissent. Marcus shared a shocking story from his previous job, illustrating how complacency and silence had a way of amplifying wrongdoing. The room fell silent, each absorbed in reflection. The acknowledgement that came next was exhilarating. It became clear that Charlotte was not merely facilitating a discussion, she was providing a platform for others to reclaim their agency. With each shared story, the bond between the team deepened, and they mirrored her rising confidence. Their collective resolve began to crystallize into a palpable force against any impending backlash. However, just as momentum began to swell, another text notification shattered her focus.
You think you're invincible? This is only the beginning.
The threat cut through her like a knife. Suddenly, her confidence felt fragile under the weight of intimidation. Gather your thoughts and hold on to your resolve, Charlotte murmured internally, struggling to contain the deep-seated fear creeping up her spine. The challenge ahead was monumental, but it also became crystal clear this was more than just an investigation, it was a fight for integrity. She stepped into a role not only as a leader but as a fortifier of truth. As she prepared to lead the team through their next steps, Charlotte felt an undeniable shift within herself. She was no longer just reacting to the tides of office politics, she was actively carving her path. With her voice firm and unwavering, she concluded, "Tomorrow will be about confronting our fears head-on and preparing our approach." There was something intoxicating about taking the initiative, yet the specter of retaliation loomed larger than before. Just as she prepared to close the meeting, a firm resolution blossomed within. "Whatever happens, I will rise," she promised herself. But as everyone filed out, the question haunted her: could she truly alter the culture of silence that had taken root, or would someone seek to silence her first? Each decision, every conversation, could serve as both a stepping stone and a potential peril. The stakes had never been higher. As dawn broke the next day, Charlotte felt an electrifying mix of resolve and apprehension. The anonymous threat lurked in the back of her mind, but her commitment to facing the challenges ahead drove her forward. With her team's collective courage echoing in her thoughts, she prepared for the next phase, turning their emotional energy into actionable steps. Charlotte's plan emerged through a series of well-structured meetings. She approached them not only as a leader but now as a catalyst for change. Each session would focus on different dimensions of their investigation and the accompanying cultural issues, enabling her team to feel empowered, rather than constrained by their fears. She selected a conference room adorned with bright artwork, colorful, lively, and intended juxtaposition to the solemnity of their task. As the team reconvened, the tension from the previous meeting seemed to lift, the atmosphere thick with anticipation rather than dread. Charlotte opened the discussion. "Today, we harness the truth in our shared experiences. Let us convert those insights into strategies we can use moving forward." She framed the investigation as a shared mission, emphasizing accountability as a cornerstone of their reputation and the organization's ethical foundation. In the ensuing conversations, her colleagues revealed frustrations that simmered just beneath the surface. Sam expressed concern about the system's response to identified issues. "It feels like we warn our clients about the iceberg, but no one listens until the ship is sinking." Charlotte seized this opportunity to shift the narrative, prompting her team to brainstorm mechanisms for feedback that would allow them to proactively address upcoming threats rather than reactively manage fallout. As they entered a brainstorming phase, Charlotte felt a growing sense of possibility in the room. Ideas flew like sparks. Aisha suggested developing a transparent reporting system that would allow employees to voice concerns without fear of reprisal. "By doing this collaboratively, we can build trust and perhaps even inspire others in the organization who feel similarly marginalized," she said, channeling her legal expertise into a proposal that resonated with everyone. "I love it," Charlotte replied, buoyed by the enthusiasm. "Let us sketch out a plan to present to management, framing it as a necessary investment in our company's health." Her heart raced. This was the moment she needed, a concrete step that could lead to a tangible change in their workplace culture. But in her excitement, the threat lingered ominously at the edge of her mind. During lunch, she found herself alone, deep in thought. The taste of her meal was overshadowed by a sense of conflict. Here she was, pushing for a new beginning, yet shadows from her own uncertainties whispered that her actions could invoke resistance. Could she manage whatever backlash would come? A sudden determination surged within her. She had to invest in her own credibility, allowing her authentic self to shine through. When the next meeting commenced, Charlotte laid out their new initiative with confidence, bolstered by her team's solidarity. She sensed their commitment mirrored her newfound resolve. What had begun as an attempt to combat fear had transformed into a pursuit of integrity within their organization. Each bold step they took together fortified her belief in her abilities. Yet, just as clarity and momentum reached their peak, an unwelcome message pinged again. "Keep pushing, Charlotte. You think they will let you rock the boat? You'll regret this." The weight of the words was suffocating. Charlotte felt panic engulf her, the resolve she had built moments ago suddenly shaking. She took a deep breath. There was no turning back, the very fabric of her ambition was woven tightly into the path they had chosen. But what if doing the right thing invited unintended consequences she wasn't prepared to face? As she gazed at her team, those faces reflecting hope and determination, her heart raced with the promise of confrontation. Her journey had only just begun, and she would no longer let fear dictate her actions. The moment was approaching when she'd have to confront the origins of the threat. Tomorrow, we decide what truth we stand for, she declared with renewed strength. But a looming question ignited her nerves: would this commitment lead to her empowerment or draw out the darkness she was determined to dismantle? Charlotte's anticipation hung thick in the air as the conference room buzzed with the team's energy. The shared excitement didn't obscure the underlying tensions, however, resentment still simmered beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to surface. Today was not just another day at work, it felt like a pivotal moment in her career and personal life. The first item on the agenda was to finalize the proposal for management. Charlotte felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. As she stood at the front of the room, the flickering screen blazed with their carefully crafted strategies, each slide a testament to collaboration and truth. But at the back of her mind, that chilling message loomed like a storm cloud. Every bold plan now carried the risk of retaliation. "Let us discuss how we can present our findings," she said, trying to infuse her voice with confidence. "We need to show them our commitment to integrity and the long-term benefits of these changes." The room, charged with enthusiasm, leaned into her vision. As they exchanged ideas, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at a precipice, teetering between hope and fear. Sam, ever the realist, raised an important concern. What if they reject us? What if they sweep this under the rug? This has happened to all of us before. The room momentarily fell silent, the collective sigh echoing their shared history of frustration in a culture reluctant to change. A moment of doubt flickered in Charlotte: could she truly lead them against the current? "Then we double our efforts," she replied firmly, her voice steadying. "This is not just about acceptance, it's about accountability." The ethos of the organization was at stake, and if they wouldn't change for the better, then they would forge a new path, together. Inspired by her resolve, the team expressed renewed dedication. The planning session escalated into a frenetic brainstorming of how they would present their findings to management. Ideas flew in various directions, each one building on the last, until Charlotte noticed a spark of inspiration in Aisha's eyes. "What if we create a visual representation of our data? Something that can't be ignored?" Charlotte nodded, seeing the potential. "Absolutely. And let us include testimonials from employees who have felt the impact firsthand. We can't just present numbers, we need to pull on their heartstrings." The tension began to fade, replaced by an exhilarating rush of possibility. She reveled in the empowerment radiating from every corner of the room. Yet, as the day wound down, just as promise and determination filled her heart, another message arrived: "You're wasting your time. You think they'll listen to a bunch of disgruntled employees? You're a fool if you think going against the grain will lead to anything but trouble." The words were icy, penetrating her newfound optimism. For a moment, her heart raced with uncertainty, grasping her breath as she struggled to quell the rising tide of doubt. Deep down, however, she sensed that this was no longer just about the organization. This was about her worth as a leader. She had fought too hard to turn back now. The days of silence were over. Turning to her team, Charlotte spoke with calculated clarity. "We can't allow fear to tether us. What matters is that we stand firm in our beliefs. Our credibility will lead us through." There was a time when she would have hesitated to express such clearly defined convictions, but the drive within her now felt indomitable. As the meeting concluded, Charlotte lingered in the room, caught in reflection. She realized that true empowerment came from confronting the fear that whispered doubts in her ear. Would she continue on this path of confrontation despite the backlash it could invite? Determined to act and transform fear into fuel, she began to sketch out her plan for a confidential team meeting later in the week, a space where they could address their concerns and organize their collective voice. Her thoughts crystallized around a singular realization, too. Encourage others to take risks, she had to embody courage herself. With her heart pounding, she recognized that the next step in her journey was not just about the proposal, it was about the battle for her own integrity and the environment they wished to cultivate. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but the fight had only just begun. There was a conflict waiting in the shadows, and Charlotte knew that she would have to summon all her strength to face it head-on. The tides were shifting, and the next encounter would test everything she had dared to build. The glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the office windows, casting long shadows across Charlotte's desk as she prepared for the upcoming confidential team meeting. Her heart raced, not only from anticipation but from the pressing weight of potential adversity ahead. Today would not simply be about presenting ideas, it would be about forging a new identity not just for herself, but for everyone in the room. As she aligned her notes, one thought gnawed at her, the message she had received the previous evening. Undermining her confidence, it whispered doubts that clawed at her resolve. The battle against dissent wouldn't be won without pushing through the discomfort. Charlotte stepped into the meeting room with a calculated calmness, though inside, her mind buzzed with strategic considerations. The team trickled in, hesitant but curious. Aisha was the first to arrive, her usual buoyancy replaced with an air of trepidation. Charlotte noticed the shift and felt an immediate impulse to reassure her. "Aisha, remember, this is our space to voice what we feel. It's essential." Aisha smiled faintly, relief washing over her face. As the others filed in, Charlotte established a grounding tone. "I know we've all had our doubts, and I want to encourage open dialogue. This isn't just a meeting, it's our chance to redefine our path together." There were nods, the room slowly warming to her invitation. Sam leaned forward once everyone settled. "Last time we tried to speak up, nothing changed. What's different now?" The question hung heavy in the air, but rather than deflecting, Charlotte saw a spark of an opportunity. "What's different is us," she replied slowly. "This is not only about what we propose but about reasserting our worth as stakeholders in this organization. We deserve to be heard." The shift from me to we resonated among the team. She saw a flicker of recognition, they were no longer just employees but participants in their own narrative. They began sharing their individual experiences, stories woven with frustration and disappointment. Each tale added weight to the collective momentum, as if their words formed a tapestry of resilience. Charlotte felt a swell of empowerment in her chest, each anecdote not only validated her feelings but also fortified her courage. As discussions deepened, she took notes meticulously, capturing the essence of what each person offered. Ideas bloomed like wildflowers in a barren field. Charlotte recognized that amid their pain lay a rich foundation for change. They were not simply demanding acknowledgement, they were ready to embrace their roles as agents of transformation. Midway through, Charlotte pressed the conversation further. "Let us not just describe the issues, let us propose actionable solutions. What can we do that shows real commitment to our beliefs?" The atmosphere shifted, the team started brainstorming practical steps. Suddenly, the focus was no longer on fear but on opportunity. Then, Aisha posed a question that shifted everything. "What if we documented our journey? A shared experience that showcases our commitment, both to the company and to ourselves?" The notion resonated powerfully. Charlotte realized in that moment that this was her chance to not only lead but to create an authentic legacy, one built on vulnerability and strength. As the meeting drew to a close, Charlotte observed the now energized group, united by a collective hope that sparked within them. They had transformed from a cohort paralyzed by potential repercussions into individuals willing to risk it all for a chance to build something genuine. Yet, just as relief threatened to settle in, Charlotte's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Staring at the screen, she felt her heart drop. "This is exactly why you'll fail. They won't just overlook you, they'll make you regret it." Ignoring the words felt impossible, but the power she felt in the room was undeniable. The narrative was changing not only for her, but for the team, too. They had taken a significant step forward. With blooming courage battling against creeping doubt, Charlotte knew the time had come for her to confront the source of their apprehension. It wouldn't be easy, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, the room filled with a sense of impending change. Tomorrow, she would devise a method to articulate their proposals to management, fully prepared to advocate for their worth.
But would her newfound strength be enough to withstand the force of opposition? And what were the ramifications of challenging the status quo? Charlotte took a deep breath, ready to face whatever awaited.
The true test loomed ever closer. The next morning, Charlotte arrived at the office early, the air crisp and charged with the weight of what lay ahead. Her mind raced through techniques she'd studied. She felt like an athlete stretching before the big game. She needed to be methodical, strategic. This was not merely about her proposals, but a reflection of their shared ambition and perseverance. Settling into her desk, she opened her laptop and began crafting a presentation that would encapsulate their voices, their experiences, and their vision. Each slide turned into a canvas where their struggles became visible, underlined with articulated solutions they had brainstormed together. This was more than a report, it was an affirmation of their collective worth, a rebranding of their narrative. Yet as she clicked through the slides, that nagging message slithered back into her thoughts.
Could she truly expect to challenge the entrenched hierarchy that had buried their voices for so long?
Self-doubt emerged like a specter, darkening her focus. Perhaps her efforts were futile against well-entrenched adversaries who thrived on dominance. Shaking her head, Charlotte pushed the fear aside. She was no longer just a voice among the crowd, she was now its leader. The supportive camaraderie of her team echoed in her mind. She was developing into a figure who, despite fearful whispers inside her head, chose to approach the decision-makers with clarity and courage.
As the day wore on, Charlotte felt anticipation mingling with anxiety.
She drew strength from the transformation her team experienced, witnessing them leap from mere compliance to empowered advocacy.
Their commitment invigorated her and sparked an idea. What if they could present their ideas not in isolation but as a cohesive team?
Charlotte quickly reached out to Aisha and the others to discuss presenting together. Imagine if we approached management not as individuals but as one united front, Charlotte proposed in the chat. We can rehearse our points and stand together, showcasing our resolve. The response was enthusiastic, fueling Charlotte's determination. The group would meet that afternoon to hone their delivery, addressing any nervousness together. With each exchange of messages, Charlotte began to see the potential for authentic advocacy not just for herself but for everyone ready to stand as equals within their organization. The meeting grew closer, and the initial excitement morphed into palpable tension. Each member had their fears to confront, echoing her own thoughts. On the surface, Charlotte appeared composed, but beneath that facade brewed an internal storm. As the clock ticked down, she took a moment to assess her polished presentation. But in doing so, she stumbled upon the hidden truth lingering in the back of her mind. It wasn't just about the proposal they were creating. It was about recognizing their worth, her worth. They were fighting against a culture that had long overlooked them, and fear would not define her or her team any longer. They gathered for their huddle, each bringing their unique perspective, their own elements of fear and anticipation. Charlotte spoke first, her voice steady but infused with urgency. This isn't just our workplace. It's where we grow, it's our identity. Each of us contributed to this proposal, and now, we stand for more than just ourselves. In that moment, an electric current of solidarity surged through the group. They were not combatants against a formidable adversary, they were catalysts for change, advocates for their collective growth. Despite the looming confrontation, hope shimmered in their eyes, shining brighter than the doubts that had threatened to shatter their resolve. Just as the small group began to practice their unified approach, another message chimed on Charlotte's phone. Her heart raced as she read it. You think you can beat them? Prepare to lose everything. How would they respond to this growing opposition? Would they truly emerge unscathed from this struggle? Charlotte felt both the weight and exhilaration of the moment, the stakes now higher than ever. Was she ready to face the potential fallout? There was only one way to find out. The stage was set for confrontation, and Charlotte steeled herself to embrace the unease that accompanied growth. Would they rise together, striking the first blow against the status quo? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be uncovered. The following morning, Charlotte walked into the meeting room with a steady resolve, the heavy threats from anonymous sources simmering in her mind but not overpowering her purpose. Gathering her colleagues around the table, she felt a palpable charge of energy, anticipation rippling through the air. They were no longer isolated voices, but a resolute team prepared to stand together and challenge the prevailing culture of silence. As each team member spoke their truth, Charlotte watched their demeanor shift, fear giving way to a budding conviction. Each individual shared their perspectives, recounting the weight of walking on eggshells for too long, the gnawing fear of repercussions overshadowing their professional lives. They articulated the necessity to reclaim their agency and fortify their voices collectively, presenting a united front against the darkness that had kept their aspirations shackled. Today, Charlotte began, her voice unwavering, we represent not just ourselves but everyone who has felt overlooked, marginalized. This meeting is a culmination of our rights to transparency, accountability, and change within our firm. She emphasized each word, ensuring that the weight of this pivotal moment was not lost. They practiced their presentation, refining their delivery, encouraging one another to delve into the heart of their proposals. The synergy in the room blossomed. A sense of purpose coursed through Charlotte, illuminating the path ahead. She was no longer just an assistant lost in the shadows, but a leader poised to inspire transformative change. As the hour drew nearer for their presentation to management, Charlotte's heart quickened, but doubt did not creep in. Every challenge they faced had only deepened their resolve, and she was committed to forging ahead. The team gathered, ensuring they were ready, rehearsing their cues, and supporting one another with nods and words of encouragement. Finally, the time arrived. Charlotte led the team into the executive conference room, where faces appeared tight and skeptical. She could see the resistance flickering in their eyes, but the collective strength behind her reassured her. What was once a dread of confrontation had transformed into a powerful momentum, and she was ready to capitalize on it. Thank you for meeting with us, Charlotte began, refocusing their attention. We have some urgent matters that, if ignored, could threaten our professional integrity as well as our company's reputation. We want to bring these issues to light in a constructive manner. Her confident stance caught even the most dismissive members' attention. With every colleague presenting their well-researched facts and emotional stories, they weaved an undeniable narrative, a story about reclaiming dignity, fostering a healthy workplace environment, and reinforcing a culture committed to ethical accountability. They proposed structured guidelines, transparent reporting systems, and candid conversations for employee feedback. Yet, just as the tensions began to thaw, the chief executive, Mr. Tanner, interrupted with skepticism. You believe that changing the culture is this simple? You'll need to convince us why this would matter beyond your anecdotes. Charlotte felt the room constrict, but she met his gaze without faltering, her expression calm and assertive. Because, with every choice we make to ignore acknowledgement or overlook transparency, we risk fracturing internal trust. Employees disengage and productivity diminishes. We're ready to invest in solutions, something that better reflects our core values. She observed her teammates, standing firm, drawing strength from one another. The tide of urgency rippled through the room, the executives beginning to lean in, curiosity unraveling their initial resistance. The questions asked became deeper, more insightful. The team answered with newfound confidence, their well-structured approach uncovering the underlying currents of reluctance that had long stymied dialogue. Charlotte felt exhilaration surge through her as they effectively navigated objections and hesitations, each challenge an opportunity to drive their message home. After what felt like hours, Charlotte sensed that the executives were taking their concerns seriously. The once staunch barriers of dismissal began to soften, a hint of change flickering on the horizon. Little by little, acceptance transformed the air. Finally, Mr. Tanner conceded, you have made compelling arguments. We will review your proposals and discuss the next steps. Your willingness to come forward today is noted. Change won't come overnight, but we will consider your report seriously. Charlotte's heart swelled with unprecedented triumph as the meeting concluded. They hadn't just spoken truth, they had proven their commitment to a brighter future, creating an opening where shadows once ruled. As the team filed out of that room, she felt each pulse of affirmation resonate within her. Their courage had triggered a shift. No longer just the hesitant assistant, Charlotte emerged as a stalwart member of her firm, a beacon of integrity. In the following days, Charlotte's transformation rippled beyond the immediate triumph. The firm began restructuring, recording employee feedback, creating initiatives for greater accountability. The echoes of their voices created deeper changes within the culture, as respect burgeoned alongside reclamation of individual worth. At home, an unexpected change blossomed too. Lily, who had previously been introverted and withdrawn, emerged from her shell, emboldened by her mother's empowerment. Their bond deepened with shared vulnerability. Charlotte had become a role model, leading her daughter to embrace her own worth and aspirations. Charlotte gazed at her reflection, the familiar girl in the mirror replaced by a woman with solid confidence, recognized competence, and a formidable sense of purpose. She conquered the silence that once confined her, emerging not just a survivor but an advocate for change. She had proved to herself what was possible through embracing her worth, igniting respect both within and beyond. Her journey blossomed toward new horizons, armed with tenacity and clarity. Charlotte took a deep, satisfying breath, welcoming the dawn of possibilities ahead. She had not just found her voice, she had come to understand the extraordinary strength that came when one truly embraces their worth. The future was an expanse of opportunities, and she was ready to conquer it all. You need to subscribe now to this channel if you want to follow the next exclusive emotional stories of transformation just like Charlotte's. Leave a like now to ensure you help fuel the algorithm and support us. Comment below your reactions and any theories about the journey of Charlotte and her team. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to be inspired by the power of personal growth. Don't wait even one more second to spread this important message.